remember, in my very first soccer game, at the end of the game, we would go and high five all the team members, and it didn't matter if you won or lost. We said congratulations no matter what. So this time, this year, 2021, let's break it down, losing politely, right? I mean, our nation, I know, is definitely in some unrest. We've got different sides that are definitely at a point where tension is high. And what do you do when you voted, you've rooted for someone, you put all your effort and energy into it, and then that candidate loses an election? How do you bounce back? Where do we go?
Well, Caress, I think that your notion of how do we end a soccer game or any athletic match is a good one, but for self-government, I think it's even more important. Every time we have a peaceful transfer of power in the United States, we set a new world record for the longest that's ever been done in the history of the world.
Oh, wow.
So this is the essence of self-government, that we say, hey, we all vote, and those that lose are going to peacefully abide by the vote. It goes all the way back to 1800 when John Adams lost a bitter contest with his friend Tom Jefferson. They refused to talk for 10 years after that, but Adams still peacefully transferred power, and it shocked the world. We've kept it going for 230 years, and this year was our worst record on that, except for the Civil War.
Wow. What do we do now? I mean, I know for me, as I look at our country, I don't kind of know what to say to anyone in terms of how we move forward. And maybe it's because of the fact that this is something we've never seen before. I mean, last year we saw things we never saw before. We were in a space that we were never there. Now we're dealing with things in our society that none of us have ever dealt with. I mean, what kind of attitudes or what kind of thought process do you need to be able to kind of enter into conversations about what's happening, as well as just kind of figure out what your next steps are?
Well, for us as everyday citizens who have an important role to play in this, the most important things are the simplest. We like to say that the first principle and the best practice of engaging differences productively is listening for understanding. If you can just get yourself to a position of listening, doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but you want to commit to getting to a place where I can understand it. Not be, I don't know about you, Chris, but I notice when tensions get a little high and I'm listening to somebody, I start to listen more for the error in what they're saying and how I'm gonna
Exactly, because you want it's a defense mechanism that comes in, and you want your point to be the presiding point, right? You don't have any room for anybody else's. Yeah,
so if you can
I understand.
That off just a little bit and say, hey, even a view I really disagree with, I want to try and understand it better. One of the advantages of that is they're a lot more likely to then listen to you honestly if you've listened to them. So I think that's important for everyday citizens, but clearly our leaders are going to have to step up. If President-elect Biden will govern the way he committed to bring us together, I think there's some real cause for hope for the future.
I'm glad that you mentioned, leadership, because I think about that so much when I think about our kids, right? When I think about what they're seeing and what kind of leaders we're being and what kind of example we're being. And I'm pressed to say, it's hard to cut the television on now. I mean, it's really difficult because you have to have those conversations with your kids after you cut it off, and there's things that they're seeing and you're not understanding it. How do you talk to them about what's happening? What do you say? And how do you kind of give them a little bit of hope about the future?
Yeah, I think one thing is to note for our children how unusual this is. I mean, this is, even for middle school and high school students, that their whole lives that they've been at all politically aware, we've been deeply divided. So I think to just call out, say, hey, this is not normal, and it's not good. It's not the way we want to conduct ourselves. And to say, hey, we all have a part in getting to a better place.
I love that. When I look at how people have been joining groups and jumping on causes and, speaking out on social media and just really kind of gathering together for a cause, at what point do you decide this is the right cause for me to be a part of versus now I'm inciting, more difference and more disdain for the other group?
We've got to understand within this country, there's no option to getting along. I mean, Civil War, we're going to have to live with each other. So even that, to recognize we can both advocate and listen with respect rather than ridicule.
Ultimately, Keith, difference is great. It's a different perspective. It allows us to broaden our minds and what's possible. So moving forward now, how do we make the possible again? I mean, how do we heal bipartisanship now as a result of everything that's been happening?
I think one thing that would help is to focus on those issues where there is quite a bit of common ground. And there's more of that than people see. The research shows that we think there is twice as much difference between Republicans and Democrats, everyday citizens, than there really is. So because the extremes talk louder and longer than the rest of us, it makes us look more divided than we really are. There's a host of issues. Getting through the pandemic clearly is, we all share that. There are pieces of that have gotten polarized, but we all want to get past the pandemic, to open the economy back up. Infrastructure, criminal justice reform, prescription drug prices. These are all areas that don't have necessarily a clearly conservative or liberal answer to it. And so I think that's where we need to focus, especially with a closely divided Congress.
I love that, Keith. It's like we just have to kind of get back to agreeing to disagree and being okay with the fact that this is a place where everyone can exist with your thoughts, and offer that or bring it to the table and have a discussion about it, and we ultimately get to a conclusion. Final words for anyone who is just looking for that something to hold on to get us through 2021 and just kind of give us some hope moving forward. What would you tell them?
Well, I would say as dark as things have looked here in the last little while, and let's be clear, on January 6th, that was extraordinarily sobering. I mean, that was really dark. But if you look over our history, we have had even more challenging crises before. We've had world wars, global depressions, a civil war. We have always come through it. There's been a lot of times where, any rational bet would say, hey, the United States is not going to come through this, and we always have. It's never been a good idea to bet against this country, and I'm still betting on it.
I love it. Let's be the resilient people that we are and prove to the world that we can bounce back after this. Thanks so much, Keith, for breaking it down. Let's heal, everybody. Let's heal.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
This hour of local news is made possible by contributions from the Friends of PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you. If you have comments about Arizona PBS News, please contact us at one of the addresses on your screen. Thank you.